Starting out with the Bills, almost moving to Seattle. By the way, this video, a lot of the Northeast teams, I don't know, almost moved west, but basically one of the cities that was frequently connected to the Bills was Seattle, and one of the main reasons was the aging stadium at the time. So really, Seattle was trying to get an NFL team. Now, they eventually got one, obviously, in the Seahawks, but Ralph Wilson did basically explore that alternative, like, really at a huge level before deciding to stay in Buffalo. But it really was a kind of an era where you had a lot of other teams as well with the AFL-NFL merger. A lot of other teams were kind of looking at maybe moving or getting something going, but the Bills did stay in Buffalo, really largely thanks to Wilson ending up having some type of loyalty to Western New York, and they did construct the new stadium, Orchard Park, although now it's actually being deconstructed. You know, it was a good stadium for its time, sold a lot of tickets, but for that reason, obviously, it kept the Bills, and sort of the classic stadium dispute, almost getting this team to go cross-country. Staying with the Bills again, they actually almost did maybe get a little bit of a momentum towards Toronto, and in the late 2000s and early 2010s, people were maybe a little bit convinced this team would actually pick up and move to Toronto. Remember, they had the Bills-Toronto series, which was basically bringing some regular season and preseason games to that area and the Rogers Center, but I think many fans in Western New York, you know, they weren't as worried as they were about Seattle at the time back then as far as this actually happening, because it didn't seem like there was really any plan in place for it. Whereas, you know, owners, when there's a stadium they don't like and they're trying to really find something else, they might really get up in arms. And you look up there in Toronto, there wasn't any obvious stadium situation. But one thing with Toronto is they have that huge market, and they do have a lot of Bills fans over there to begin with that were already supporting in Buffalo. So, hey, maybe there's a slight chance they would go to Toronto. But ultimately, the Bills basically remained committed to Western New York. And of course, the franchise was repurchased by somebody else in 2014, and they wanted to keep it in Buffalo. Plus, the Toronto series ended up like stopping in 2013, and it didn't do as well maybe as some others would have thought it would have done for the Bills. And so Buffalo, of course, staying put, and with the new stadium, it's just like, where are you going to go? And this one was a little more real. The New England Patriots, another Northeastern team in the early 90s, the Patriots actually had kind of a chance to move to St. Louis. It's funny because they did end up beating St. Louis in a Super Bowl kind of in the same time frame. Obviously, the Rams, the greatest show on turf, whatever, kind of ending that era. But at the time, owner James Earthwine purchased the team in 92, and he basically wanted to bring the Patriots to St. Louis because that would have been his hometown. That would have been the only goal behind it. And of course, St. Louis did lose what is now the Arizona Cardinals, and a lot of people were already scorned by that. Plus, he did secure the branding rights to the name St. Louis Stallions and explored plans to move the team into the Trans World Dome, that stadium being built in hopes of attracting an NFL franchise. Plus, the Patriots, you got to remember, before Tom Brady and stuff like that and Bill Belichick, they did struggle a little bit on the field, and they were facing some uncertainty with an aging Foxborough Stadium, but the move did end up failing because the Patriots were still tied to the stadium through a pretty big lease from Robert Kraft, and he purchased the stadium in 1988, so he was basically refusing Earthwine to let him buy out the lease and block that chance of moving the team to St. Louis. So he ended up Earthwine selling the rest of the franchise to Kraft in 1994, and of course, under that ownership, the Patriots have built a dynasty and remained in New England. And the Patriots, another situation they were in the late 90s, they actually almost relocated to Hartford, Connecticut when they had a pretty big stadium dispute, and basically Robert Kraft was kind of trying to get a new stadium in the Boston area, and actually led some Connecticut officials to aggressively pursue the franchise and maybe clear the pathway for the Patriots to open up the gates. And they even had a publicly funded proposal for a new waterfront stadium that would have been in downtown, and that would have had all the upgrades and everything that the team was looking for, so that could have been huge. And so with that being said, I mean, imagine the Hartford Patriots. That just has a weird name to it. There has been a couple of franchises, I think the Hartford Whalers, to try out Connecticut, but it is definitely not a traditional American sports market for pro sports, that is anyway. But ultimately, Robert Kraft able to come to a deal in a stadium agreement in Massachusetts, and of course Gillette Stadium is now up. But that decision to keep the Patriots in Foxborough definitely continued what was really already a good stretch, and of course set the Patriots up to have their dominant run. But really, a couple times the Patriots nearly got out of New England. And a little bit down the East Coast, Philadelphia actually had a scare of almost moving to Phoenix, and this was in 1984. By the way, I can't imagine two opposite really cities for an NFL franchise in terms of the culture and the fan base. But basically, you know, in the mid-1980s, you had Veterans Stadium kind of aging. There was some ongoing uncertainty about the stadium funding, so relocation rumors, of course, would surface during this era, as they do typically when a team is, on the lifespan of a stadium or looking for something else. But Phoenix had been growing at the time, and it still really is as one of those big cities. And of course, Phoenix, it's hosted multiple Super Bowls, as the Cardinals too, but there was never a finalized plan or formal relocation process on these ends. But really, Philadelphia's stadium challenges and this Phoenix's just rapid population growth had fueled a lot of that speculation that maybe this could happen, although again, negotiations never really broke down. It's just kind of interesting to talk about, especially, once the Eagles got new ownership and they kind of had secured a stadium thing, it really obviously got the ball moving in the right direction. Eventually, Lincoln Financial Field constructed, and so it's hosting plenty of games and everything. But I don't know, that just to me would have felt like the biggest cultured mover, like the Eagles going to Phoenix. Everything about the Philadelphia fans, and they're so attached to that team. You couldn't see Philadelphia and the Eagles anywhere else. The Phoenix Eagles just doesn't make any, that feels so wrong. The Seattle Seahawks nearly took a trip to California. This one was really close to happening, and this is probably the closest call of them all, I would say. In the mid-90s, basically, the Seahawks, they were kind of in the center of relocation speculation. Now, they had actually, obviously, they're a expansion franchise to Seattle. They had been there, for some time, but their owner, in Ken Behring, was basically dissatisfied with the Kingdome. There were some safety issues, and so there's probably been a ton of videos made. In fact, there has been on the Kingdome, kind of an interesting place, but obviously, Seattle's looking for a new stadium. Now, they end up getting one, but Anaheim had recently lost the Rams to St. Louis, or kind of in that same area in LA, and they really did emerge as a logistical landing spot because they already had the NFL-ready stadium at Angel Stadium, and the Southern California's market has that huge fan base in there, so you could argue this is an easy plug-and-play situation. And there were even reports that staff and equipment was already starting to be moved to Anaheim, and things were actually in motion for this to happen. And despite this escalating quickly, things really unraveled for this move due to legal pressure, the NFL kind of stepping in, and a lot of resistance from the local stakeholders in the team. Not only that, there was a lot of threat from the NFL that the Seahawks could be facing if they kind of improperly stepped away, and that's when Paul Allen too kind of stepped in to purchase the franchise in 1997, which really ended any chance of this move taking place. And everybody remembers the weird Saints timeline with the unfortunate events of Hurricane Katrina in 2005, and so what happened with that is the Saints pretty close to maybe becoming the next team in San Antonio. So of course the Superdome was left destructed by Hurricane Katrina, and so in 2005 the Saints had to play a ton of these weird phantom home games away from the dome as it was being repaired and totally damaged and out of here. But San Antonio was a strong candidate because they had the Alamo Dome ready to host NFL games. In fact, they built that to potentially lure an NFL team, and there were a lot of officials obviously pretty interested in becoming the team's new long-term home. You could argue this too because they had already had the dome get destroyed, and hey, you're looking for a new spot. And New Orleans had its operations already kind of split between San Antonio and New Orleans, with the Saints having to operate in just so many different homes. So realistically, you're thinking, hey, this can be an NFL spot. But really, this never happened because I think after, especially the tragedy that took place in the city, a lot of the leadership of the team really wanted to be a part of the recovery effort, and the league also emphasized that it was probably really essential for the city's identity and rebuilding for the Saints to be there. And they ended up renovating the Superdome as well for the 2006 season, which I would say probably better than the Alamo Dome, to be honest with you anyways. If the Saints would have gone to the Alamo Dome, I don't know how long they would have lasted, or if we're 20 years down the line from that. Right about now, I would think they'd be looking to move away because it is kind of a dated stadium. It doesn't have that natural light, and it hosts some other events, and it's hosted a ton really well. But as far as NFL football, I could see it aging pretty fast. But these are the NFL relocations that almost happened, or some of the most notable ones. So drop some comments and a like below if you have any thoughts. Feel free to subscribe if you like content like this. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned for the next one.